Hey, it's Your Financial Maven, Samantha Mittman-Besnoff, CPA. And after almost 25 years in the accounting world, I've decided to share my insights and passion about money. Knowing your money and hopefully feeling less stress about your money is what I call being financially empowered. Welcome to the Your Financial Maven podcast. Welcome to the Your Financial Maven podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Mittman-Besnoff, CPA. I am so excited today because my guest on our show today is someone that I've known last few years, has a great social media presence with all things financial. So I'm so excited to welcome Billy Zerillo to the Your Financial Maven podcast. So welcome, Billy. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was really looking forward to this.
So you started your career in the financial services in 2018. You are currently the Vice President and Wealth Management Advisor of TerraWealth, LLC. You are such a passionate leader. Your greatest desire is to serve others. You love to help your clients learn financial fundamentals, and you love to provide them with plans to succeed in their goals. You do have a podcast called The Money Talk, and you're currently working on a book. You can follow Billy on Instagram and YouTube at The Money Talk Advisor. I'll put all that information in the bio to the podcast episode, along with your email and website for TerraWealth. I would love to talk a little bit about the book you're working on, how it delves into the whole money talk and what you do for your clients.
Yeah, I am not the book reader type of person. Like I read books that are maybe 200 pages, 250 pages is pushing it. So to write a book was not something that was ever on my radar, but it falls right in line with the title of my podcast, The Money Talk. And it's really the talk that we should have had when we were kids. You know, the important information I always tell my clients when we're sitting down with them is we've all made financial mistakes. There's no one on this earth that hasn't made some type of financial mistake in some form or fashion. And it's because we just weren't taught these things. And it's often that we have to go through life making a ton of mistakes. And hopefully we don't make catastrophic financial mistakes. And it's really learning by trial by fire. So it's really educational based. I do have a co-author that's writing it with me, which is really awesome. They're in TerraWealth, the firm that we're in, and her name is Samantha Thompson. And what's really interesting about the book is that I'm very story driven, where she's very analytical. So each chapter is written by one of us, and you get a very analytical side of finance, but then you also get a very fundamental education, teaching type of aspect of the book.
Which is so important when it comes to understanding your money. That's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why during season 1 of my podcast, I talked about understanding your money. And you're right. I'm a little older than you and Gen X, and I know you're millennials, but I think you're right. I think our parents on some level, we learned by watching, not being talked to about it. So if your parent is doing something when it comes to financial that maybe wasn't a good choice, but you don't know any different, it can change that. And that whole taboo of talking about money, we need to talk about it. Plain and simple. We need to share.
100%. And it's not just with our own selves, but it's with our spouses. It's with our partners. We need to be having conversations about money. I'm totally agreeing. Like, it's not a taboo subject. We should be talking about it because it touches every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely. I mean, I talk to my kids about everything. When it comes to our finances, my husband and I talking about the mortgage, or we're talking about something when it comes to their college stuff, we share it with them because if they don't understand and know, then they're not going to make better choices. And our oldest, when he was heading off to college, he said to Larry and I, he goes, "So how do you learn about this stuff?" And we were like, we did it trial by fire. Nobody told us, hey, you might want to shop around or look at banks at different rates on CDs or interest rates on loans because they're not all the same.
Yeah. Like the first time I heard the word CD, I thought like a CD, like something I'm going to listen to music on. But no, it's something that you can actually put money into and earn a little bit of interest.
A certificate of deposit, for those that don't know, it's CD, not the CD that those of us used to have. It's certificate of deposit. So it's a weird thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you have an idea of generally when that book will be available?
We're looking to release it by the end of this year. I believe it was December 15th or 14th, somewhere in there is when we're looking to have it out.
When you launch it and you have it out, let me know. I will absolutely share it with all my listeners because I think it's important. So I asked a lot of my guests this question because it's an important question. And I want to know from other financial professionals what they view this question as. So the question is, what is money?
Well, if you had asked me 10 years ago, it would have been a very different response than what you're going to get from me now. Like for me, it's a tool. It's a tool to get what we need from this world. And when we look at it as a tool, we don't idolize it. 10 years ago, I used to idolize money. I used to think about money of like, it's going to solve all my problems. It's going to give me status. It's going to give me all these things that I'm missing inside. But as I started to educate myself about money and learn about money and learn how to use money, I then said, now this is just a tool. This is just a thing that I use to get what I need.
Was it getting into financial services that changed your outlook on it? Was it anything particular or getting more in tune to it?
I think it really stems from that change happened when I hit about 30, 31. I'm 36 now. But it came because I really started to have, I don't want to call it a midlife crisis. Midlife crisis is 40, correct? I don't even know.
Yeah, I'll be 50 next month. So I think I'm still in my midlife crisis, but yes,
So
40 is about right.
Let's just say I had like an identity crisis at the age of 30.
How about an epiphany?
Yes, an epiphany. That's even better. I'm going to start using that from now on. But there's certain ages that you hit, especially like those even numbers, the 30, the 40, the 50. You look at your life and you say, hey, I'm not 20 anymore. I really need to get this kind of figured out. And I knew that I needed to get better with my money because I remember looking at my parents, and I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but not the greatest of examples when it came to money. And I just said to myself, if I keep on this path, I'm going to end up just like that. And for me, that's not the life I wanted.
Right. And that goes back to that point of we learned by watching and not being talked to about it.
Yes.
Breaking that cycle. And there's nothing wrong with it. We're not saying our parents did it wrong or are terrible people. It's just that's how they learn. It's just different.
Yeah. So with that said, yeah, it just dawned on me. And I remember I was not having conversations about money with my own wife. Like I just didn't know.
Right, which is just as important.
I never saw that happen. All the conversations I ever saw my parents having about money were fights, were arguments. And so I was like, I don't want to talk about money because I don't want to get into an argument. So when we started to see money as just a means to an end, our conversations became better around money. It wasn't blaming each other. It was like, okay, these are the numbers. Like, what do we need to do to move forward to be better about using this tool?
Which is important.
Yeah.
It's important when you're in a relationship talking about money, because I'm sure your wife's situation was probably different than your situation about how her parents talked about money and how you bring that together and not have the fights about it.
Yeah, because her parents are the complete opposite of my parents. They work for the government. They got pensions. They got this. They got that.
And they probably didn't fight too often about money.
And so it's really interesting dynamic between her and I because of that, because having that epiphany that I needed to be better. If I want better, I'm going to have to be better and really start talking about having those conversations about money and seeing it as, hey, this is just a tool, a means to an end. It doesn't define who we are as people. There's that saying, if you win the lottery, you don't become a better person or a worse person. You just become more of who you already are. So yeah, once we started to see it like that, the conversations became easier and we got a joint vision of where we wanted to go.
I think that's important. If you and your spouse or significant other partner can have a vision of where you think you want your finances to go, then it helps. But you can still have that conversation and make changes or do different things. My boys always joke, my husband, he's in IT. He's been at his job for almost 30 years, same company, which is very rare, I think, because I have bounced around.
Same here.
I've bounced around. I worked for myself the last 10 years. And when I had the kids, our decision was for me to not work full time. So it did cut into our finances. But we had to have that conversation. And my boys will always be like, you're taking dad's money. And I'm like, no, it's our money. But daddy works more than you. And getting that concept of he might work more than me hour-wise, but that doesn't mean that we don't share in things and have those conversations. So with that, using money as a tool, which I agree with you, money is absolutely a tool. It's a resource. When you're working with your clients and talking with them, do you talk about budgeting or spending plans or ways to help guide them so that it gives them those goals? They can reach their goals. Like, how do you go about working with your clients for their goals?
That has changed in the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years. I had another epiphany. I got into financial advising And I'm very big on self-development and always trying to improve myself, not only trying to improve myself for my personal life, but for clients to be the best advisor I possibly can be. It used to be clients would come in where I would get involved with a conversation with somebody and it would be like, oh, let me see all your documents, your paperwork, just get data and not really focusing on what they were saying. It was just like, hey, this is all your stuff. This is what I think you should do. These are my recommendations. If you don't like it, okay, whatever, too bad. But it wasn't until the last couple of years that I really flipped that on its head and started actually trying to understand my client by asking them questions that were important to them. What it came down to is that people don't really wake up and say, I need a 60-page financial plan. People wake up and they have financial questions that are keeping them up at night and they want the answer to them. So a very important conversation that we have is called the history of money. And that's where I share my upbringing in money. I share my personal journey with money. And I do that so that they feel comfortable to tell me about their personal journey with money.
I think you're right. That's important. I mean, especially when I work with my small business clients for taxes and accounting work. And I'm a small business owner. I am me, myself, and I. And especially for the small business owners that are sole proprietors, are by themselves, and talking about why do I have to pay self-employment tax? And I try to tell them, I get it. I put in a lot of estimates during the year to cover my self-employment tax because that's what the government does, just is the nature of the game. So I agree. You have to be at that level with your clients to make them feel comfortable, especially when it comes to talking about money.
Yeah. So we begin to bring awareness to what we call their financial purpose or their financial why they're doing what they're doing. Because I could tell you, you need to open up a Roth IRA, you need to save this much money, you need to do X, Y, Z. What does that really mean to that client? Is that accomplishing what their purpose is? Because I'll tell them, I said, listen, hopefully we have a really long relationship together. And if we go through a really long relationship together, we're going to run into a lot of tough decisions that we're going to have to make. And if you don't have a strong enough why or purpose, we're probably going to make wrong decisions because you're going to be really emotional about all your money.
You make a good point there. It's not to say you can't be emotional about your money, but you really have to take the emotion out of it when it comes to making decisions, or you're going to go down a path that you're not going to like and not be happy with.
Yeah, let's be honest. We've all been up late at night making lots of Amazon purchases because we've been upset about something. Yes. So I get it. We're humans. We're emotional. We're emotionally driven. If we can always kind of look back to that North Star of our financial purpose and defining that for somebody, like that's where we start. And then we get into financial health, the financial health scores that we look at to see, okay, now that we have data, do you need a budget? Okay, the data says you need to be budgeting because of this. And it takes the pressure off me as the advisor to be like the bad person. I'm just going by what the data tells me.
And I think it's important when you're thinking of budgeting or a spending plan. I think ultimately they're both about helping you get the goals and get the things that you need and helping you to save and guiding you. And I've always talked about, I don't feel that they're ever really set in stone. They're set there, they're guides, but your situation might change. And you may need to change that budget or change how you spend your money. But having the tools to understanding that and guiding you, because when I say, oh, you need to budget, when I talk to clients, they get upset and I don't want to do that. And I'm like, you need to, especially with businesses. That's different than I think talking about individuals. I think businesses really need to have more set in stone budgets and goals. I think individuals need to have that, but it's not a scary thing. I think people get scared when you say budget.
Yeah. For a lot of people, when they hear the word budget, it's a dirty word. It's like you're cursing at them almost. Oh, I got a budget? Like, right. Like, how dare you? Yeah. Right. And it's like, if you think about the wealthy in this country, they know where every one of their dollars is going. They know where it's going, where it's coming. And budgeting is not meant to be restrictive. It's meant to bring awareness to where your dollars are going. Yeah, it might hurt the first time you do a budget to be like, ooh, like I spent how much at restaurants this month? But when you bring awareness to it, now we see it. And now we're going to ask the question, is there something you want to do about it? Like, do you enjoy seeing that number? No, you don't. Okay, let's cut that down a little bit. That's budgeting.
Yeah, just understanding that it's not a scary thing. And first time you sit down to do it, and like you said, look at your numbers. Yeah, it's going to scare people probably. It's going to be like, oh, I didn't realize I'm bringing in X amount of dollars every month and I'm spending X amount. Because I also hear a lot of people say, I don't have enough to put away for savings. And my key thing is put something away. Every paycheck, every time you get some money in, just put something away. I know rule of thumb is usually 20% or 3 to 6 months of savings, but put something away because you need that. You need to give yourself that. And I think it's important. Hey, it's time for a money break. Welcome back from our money break. Like I mentioned before, you're on the social media and posts and videos, and I love it because a lot of the things you talk about are important for people to learn. And one of the things I came across actually was you're talking about tracking your money, understanding your money, and that there were 4 key areas. You talked about debt rate, burn rate, tax rate, and savings rate. I didn't know if you could go a little bit more into kind of what the thought process of that is the idea of when you're tracking your money, those are the areas you need to be aware of.
Those 4 elements help us answer a question of how wisely are we spending our income? Because like you were saying, people will say, I don't have enough to save. Really? Let's really start to dive into that and let's explore whether or not you really don't have the income. And like you said, it doesn't matter if it's $5. If you could save $5 a paycheck, that's something. You have to start somewhere. But going back to those 4 elements, there's really 4 areas of where your income is going to go. So one is taxes. As far as a normal W-2 person, there's not a ton they can do as far as taxes, but making sure, are they taking all the deductions from, if they have kids, that's probably important. If you're not taking deductions for your kids, you probably should be doing that. But if you're a business owner, if your tax rate's really high, let's question that. Are you taking all the deductions as a business owner that you can? So anyways, you have income that's going to taxes. That's just inevitable. You're going to pay taxes.
Right. Part of life.
Yeah.
Death and taxes, part of life.
Yeah. And if you don't, the IRS will come have a nice conversation with you.
Yes. They won't come knocking on your door, but they will send you a notice.
Yes.
I promise they will not come knocking at your door.
They'll send you a notice. The next place is your burn rate. And so burn rate is the amount of income that you have that's going to not debt-related things. So the amount of income that you're burning through on just everyday spending. And then your savings rate, which is the amount of income that you have that's going towards any savings goal. It's not just retirement, it's emergency funds,
life insurance, investments.
All that stuff. Any money that you're putting away for future use. And really, those are the 4 areas that we look at. And all 4 of those areas should equal 100% of your income. When somebody says, I don't have enough income to save for goals, if I see that 100% of your income is not accounted for, we can then begin to ask questions. Why is some of your income not being reported here or recorded here? Are we missing something? Or we just have income that's unaccounted for that is just going somewhere. So then after that, we then start to look at all those indicators of, are they all in a healthy range? If I look at your debt to income ratio and it's at 40%, that's not healthy. That's just telling us that 40% of your income is going towards debt. We need to address that. And we need to see what that debt is. Now, obviously, there's the people out there that say there's good debt, bad debt. Debt is debt. It's just debt.
I agree. Debt is debt. And I know we're struggling a bit in times right now. People keep saying the housing market's going to burst, the bubble will burst. And I have to say, it isn't cheap. I mean, trying to find a place to rent is not necessarily at the cost it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. Things have gone up in prices. My older son goes to college in New York, and his meals, for whatever reason, are expensive on campus. It shouldn't be, but they are. And he's a swimmer. It's not that he's blowing through his money to eat. He's a swimmer and he's in swim season. So he's eating a lot.
He's eating like 5,000 calories a day.
He's eating a lot more than that. But, it's that idea of that debt to income. There are ways to help that.
Yes. There's plans, there's strategies to get through that. But we look at that number and we say, is this a healthy number? It's not. What can we do to affect that number to put it somewhere where we need to? We look at the burn rate. Is that burn rate too high? Are you spending 90% of your income on just junk? And then we look at the savings rate. If I'm looking at your savings rate and you said earlier, a rule of thumb is 20% of your income is really where you need to be. And if I look at somebody and I say, hey, you're only saving 5% of your income right now towards your goals, we need to increase that. But people will get weirded out when I say, you need to save 25% of your income. They're like, there's no way I can do that. And I'm like, I get it. I don't expect you to. But you're at 5% right now. In the next 3 months, could we get to 6%? Could we be at 7%?
And it's that habit of saving. That's why I always say, start with $1, start with $5. If you get yourself into a habit Then when you have these conversations, can I move up to 10%, 15% to save? Can I adjust what I have? Then it's not as scary, I think. And I agree with you. And I try to instill that on people and say, those are the rules of thumbs. Those are what people are saying. But if you're still saving, you're still saving. Like whatever you can do. And of course, when we talk about savings, there's the different vehicles. There's investments, whether that's in the stock market or the certificate of deposits, CDs or money markets. But then you also have retirement funds and life insurance and other vehicles. I think it's important for people to understand there are different ways to save your money and hopefully have some protection in that too.
You hit the nail on the head. That's one of the other elements that we look at are, do I have the right mix of assets? So do I have enough cash on hand? Do I have enough in my retirement? If I own a business, how much of my business value is going to impact my net worth? So like liquid term is something that we look at for emergency fund. It's a measure of all your cash-like assets, how long you can live off those cash-like assets based on your current spending. If somebody's at a 0.1, that tells me they could live off 1 month without bringing any income home. So living on all their cash. But if that number's a 1, that tells me that's a really healthy number. That's saying 1 year you could live off all your cash and be able to live your current lifestyle, the current spending that you have. So for a lot of people, that helps drive down anxiety because they know I have a little bit of a runway if something happens. If an emergency happens, a job loss, or you need a new roof, or you need a new car, or whatever it might be, you have a little bit of runway.
Which is important. Not only am I a CPA, but I'm also a life insurance agent. And I do talk to people about life insurance. When I get people say, I have it through work. Okay, but what if you lose your job or you move on? You need to have a little extra. Well, I can't afford that. And again, it's that idea of what can you do when you're looking at your money to help get yourself having some life insurance, having retirement. There are ways to go about it so that you can have those things. Because if we don't delve into this and talk about it, then you might not be aware that, yeah, I can do that. I can still live off of what I have and I've got some extra and now I can take it and put it towards something.
Yeah, it's all about how you use your income. That's what it comes down to is your income is the number one asset that you have in your life. Your ability to make it. So that's why life insurance is important. The ability to make income is super important. If you don't protect that, your family's going to be in a bad situation.
Which is so interesting that you say about protecting, because as I was doing some research, I came across, you had something talking about protecting when it comes to third-party apps with PayPal and Venmo and protecting your money and talking about that because dealing and working with money has changed since we grew up. Yeah, there's cash and coins still out there, but a lot of it is Venmo, PayPal, or electronic, and keeping track of that and how you can get in trouble with that.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's crazy. The other day, I asked a person that they were 25, 26, and I said, oh, I'm going to need a voided check. They're like, what's a check? Right? Like, it's like crazy to think about. I'm like, wait, what?
Because they don't know what a check is.
Yeah. But that goes back to the original point of this conversation, the money talk. Everyone needs to have this talk because you should know what a check is. Regardless if you don't ever use them, you should know that you could still get them at your bank. They still give them out.
My boys have checking accounts. They've had checking accounts since they were like 9 or 10. And I worked with them to write checks. I said, because it still might come across having to utilize a check, whether it's voiding it so that you can set up an investment account or something like that. And understanding the concept of a check. The check is talking about, I'm paying you X amount of dollars and I'm approving it. And I have that money in the bank, you hope, right? But yet these third-party apps are crazy.
Yeah, they definitely are. And it was just crazy when I wrote that post. I really started to do some due diligence on it and really dive into it. And especially because some of my clients are small business owners, and that really affects small business owners. And I'm sure more than anybody, especially with some of these third party and the merchant providers that they use and stuff like that, can definitely impact a small business.
2023 tax year is going to be interesting. We haven't gotten clarification how they're doing this. But it used to be with credit cards or these third payers that if you had 20,000 or more of income that you received, that's when you'd get the tax document. And they moved it down to 600, and people failed to remember that 600 mark has actually been there forever when it comes to paying a vendor who might be a sole proprietor, paying independent contractors. That 600 level has been there, but for businesses, it was always higher. Now, I'm going to say, if you're in a business, you should be reporting all your income. I know I get flack for that because then I got to pay taxes on it. But I'm sorry, if you own a business, you need to be recording all your income, whether it's through third party or not.
Yeah, I agree.
Cash, third party, you need to record your income.
Yes. I'd rather
I get a lot of frowns on that one.
I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Hey, it's Your Financial Maven, and I want to hear from you. Feel free to leave me your insights and money stories or questions that you may have about money. You can visit www.yourfinancialmavenpodcast.com and click on the I Want to Hear From You tab. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about money. The purpose of this podcast is to provide general information on the subjects discussed. It is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. You should consult your CPA, accountant, or tax professional for all of your specific financial needs or situations. Your Financial Maven is hosted and produced by Samantha M. Besnoff, CPA, and Your Financial Maven, LLC. Editing is done by Chris Zarnock of KM Zen Creative. Music is written, composed, and performed by Daniel Shore.